Good morning. This is October 9th, 2018. This is the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners agenda setting for work session. This is the preliminary to the later on when we have the actual Board of County Commissioners live on TV. I'm on this agenda right here. It's the master agenda. And so we'll start with that. And so first item we have is the BOCC draft agenda for today, which is October 9th. And so the first item we have is to call the meeting to order. And that's Commissioner Hutchings to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And then we'll move to approve the agenda and any board meeting minutes after that. We have a number of presentations for today. And the first one is the proclamation for civility and conflict resolution for this month. And we have Jody Schreiber, who is the director, executive director for the Dispute Resolution Center. She'll be here to give a little background of what the Dispute Resolution Center plays a critical role here in Thurston County in terms of resolving issues both tiny and large, big and wide, and it is actually a really neat organization in terms of pulling people together and solving issues. So, any questions on that?
No. Nope.
All righty. Then we have one from the auditor being Mary Hall, and the proclamation for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And I think she'll be here to be able to give a little bit of background on what she's doing.
The auditor, Mary Hall, she will be here this afternoon to have a conversation with the board and for you to consider to proclaim the month of October Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And this is a state and national effort. and Mary will walk you through the details of that proclamation.
Okay, any questions on cybersecurity?
Nope.
Okay. Then we have another proclamation. It's the Proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and this is from the prosecuting attorney, and Christine Peters, she's the chief of staff for the prosecuting attorney's office. She'll be here to give a little bit of background, as well as any others that want to chime in, because this is the Anti-Domestic Violence Month, and so we want to make sure we highlight that, and also awareness for American Cancer Society. So.
Yeah, and for your consideration, you have the same proclamation on the Board of Health. And Christy Peters this afternoon from the county commissioners will bring, I believe, some guests, and she will introduce those guests to support the effort of the Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Sure.
And if you've noticed, this proclamation for domestic violence prevention is lovely.
Oh, yeah.
Concise.
Short.
Oh, yeah. Short and sweet.
Okay, so that gets us through any kind of proclamations or public announcements of sort.
There's one more.
Oh, is it really?
From Human Resources.
Oh, yep, I see it. Human Resources Quarterly Calls for Applause Drawing. What is that all about?
So this is not actually a proclamation. Katie Gerard, the HR director, will come and engage the commissioners to draw names from employees for a cause for applause, and for you to have the opportunity to send specific cards for any particular outstanding activities they have done here in the county. And again, this is an opportunity for the commissioners to be part of the employee recognition efforts that Katie Gerard has underway.
All right, any questions about calls for applause? Okay, so that moves us into the next item, which is the opportunity for the public to address the board. And so I just see if there's any feelers there. Anybody might be able to have something to say.
We have a public hearing this afternoon at 5:30, and that's related to increasing the rates for water and sewer utilities that we manage in the county. Perhaps you may receive some public testimony related to that, but haven't heard anything else.
All righty. So then the next item is number 2, which is the county manager's update. And then you have any items you might put out from the county managers?
I don't have any specific follow-up items this afternoon.
That moves us right into consent items. We only have one consent item, which is A, or Alpha, and that's from the auditor's office, the financial services, which we normally have posted on the website. So,
yep. And that's your weekly voucher list approval.
Sure. So the next items is department items, which is item number 4. The first one we have is from the sheriff's office. It's a contract for part-time school resource officer in the Rainier School District.
Yeah, under normal circumstances, items 4A and 4B are consent agenda because of the dollar amount. But I have asked the sheriff's office to come and give a presentation because I believe the public will be interested in listening some of the programs the sheriff's office participates on some of the school districts. So item 4A is for $40,000, and that's for a part-time school resource officer for 2 schools in the Rainier School District. And this is for the school year 2018-2019. This is a renewal contract because we have the same contract with the Rainier School District for the school year 2017 and 2018. Item 4B is similar to that, and this contract is for $60,000. And this is to provide a resource officer to the Rochester School District. And Mr. Braniff, the undersheriff, will be here this afternoon just to explain what those programs are all about in terms of supporting the school districts.
All righty. Any questions about SROs?
No.
Okay. So that ends number 4A and B, which we're going to item number 5, which is Public Works. And this is a request for approval of amendment number 2 to the waste export and disposal agreement between Thurston County and Regional Disposal Company.
So this is a follow-up to a couple of briefings to the board related to the contracts that we have on collecting and disposing the solid waste here in the county. Those two, we have 2 contracts, and we would like to align via this amendment one of them to April 30, extended to April 30, 2020. That will create the alignment with the other contract. Parallel to that, you will be perhaps providing a direction in an upcoming meeting as to how the procurement process you would like to implement as we go through in renewing those contracts. And again, this is just procedural, just to align those 2 contracts. And I will bring an item for your consideration maybe in the next couple of weeks for you to help us, give us guidance in terms of the procurement process.
For the public out there, could you just explain a little bit the aligning of those contracts and what you mean by that?
Yeah, thank you. We have 2 different contracts. One is for the collection, and one is for disposal and transportation of solid waste. Those 2 contracts are with Republic, and they have been in place for almost 20 years. One of those contracts, which is what you have in here, is the disposal and transportation, lapsed this year, October 31st, 2018. And the other contract, which is the collection, ends on April 30, 2020. And the intent is to bring this particular contract, which is the disposal agreement, to align with the transportation, with the collection, both to be ending on April 30, 2020. With that is the intent to allow the staff have enough time to go through the procurement process, whichever process you decide to go with, because it's a very complex contract. It has a lot of roles, responsibilities, and requirements. And the size of those contracts is close to $14 million a year. So we need to make sure that we take the right steps, making sure that we have the right procurement process that brings the best possible contract to the citizens. And again, it's just the intent just to align those 2 contracts, and again give staff enough time to go through the procurement process.
And that, in the contract, that allows for an extension.
This is a clause in the contract, allows for an extension. And in this particular case, this is an extension that we can exercise by ourselves, and that's what we're planning to do. Beyond those dates, it has to be a mutual agreed extension. But at this point, we're not planning to extend those because I believe, and we believe as a staff, that those contract needs to be renewed and reassessed and reevaluated.
Thank you.
Is the April 30th, 2020 too far, too short?
No, I think is the right time because if it's only almost 18 months away, and going through the RFP process, if that's the process you would like to go, it's going to take a little time to go through the selection process. Just make sure that all the contract is in place. Just to give you an example, the current contract is close to 250 pages of all the different terms and conditions. So I would expect the next contract that is coming up is going to be a significant size. So we need to make sure that we allow ourselves enough time to make sure that we cross all the T's and dot all the I's.
We might need all 18 months to read that.
Yeah.
And so the 2020 date puts it in a line with the other contractor?
Yep.
Okay, and this waste disposal company, they're amenable to that, exercising that extension?
Not necessarily. Again, this is we are exercising our rights. We don't need to
Right.
check with them in a way.
It doesn't have to be mutual, but I'm going to surmise that they're okay with it.
I will be extremely surprised if they will be opposed to
Because
this.
we are reading a conflict resolution proclamation today.
Civility, huh?
Civility, yeah. Make sure that we're in alignment with them.
I will venture to say the contractors are eager to see this extension. So
Okay.
at least put some parameters.
Thank you.
And what was the original deadline?
It was October 31st, 2018 for this particular contract. So it's coming up.
Good. All right. Any other questions?
No.
All righty. So we're going to move on to number 6, which is essential services. And this is a resolution declaring an emergency and recognizing the need to immediately evaluate, repair, and replace electrical system infrastructure serving the Thurston County Courthouse buildings 1, 2, and 3.
So this
Okay.
is a follow-up to the power outage that
Yeah.
we had here at the courthouse. And just to give you a background for the public, there is three electrical lines coming into the courthouse campus. One of those failed last week, which we ended up having to shut down the whole campus just to fix it and splice it. That fix was more than the authority your Director of Central Services, Martin Casey, has in terms of approving those contracts. But we needed to fix that as soon as possible. I think it was a successful fix, but you can also understand that we need to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a future similar situation. So this particular motion action does two things. By declaring an emergency, you allow additional expenditures above $5,000 to compensate for the activities that we did last week with the contractors, and also allows the Martin Casey to look in more detail as to what will be somewhat of a quote-unquote permanent fix. As a reminder, those lines are 40 years old since the courthouse was constructed. So I think we need to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a similar situation as we had last week, where we couldn't provide any services to the citizens. We have to shut the courthouse down. This is really the action for your consideration today. And again, that's two things. Increases the cost for Martin Casey to pay the bills that we incurred last week, and also give him the direction to look for ways to find a permanent fix. And again, quote unquote, because permanent will be replacing all the lines, but we just have to see what the scope of work of that will be.
What are your questions?
Well, I guess I'd just say that time is money, and we lost a lot of productivity on that one day that we had to shut down. So it's an expensive endeavor if we do not get it fixed properly.
Absolutely, and that probably is related to the age of this facility. And again, 4 years old, and we're just seeing some of the critical infrastructure start failing. So at some point, it's going to is going to take a lot of money just to keep up with the needed repairs the building needs. So.
And this isn't a leaky roof or torn carpet or ceiling tiles falling out. This is a major infrastructure with the main power cable coming into the courthouse. And just let the public know that all non-essential folks were sent home for the day. Superior Court has to function, but they had to, one of the judges had to declare a mistrial, send the jurors home, which is a great inconvenience for jurors that come in to be selected, and we functioned.
And the inmate security.
Oh, and security at all, to include inmate. So we can't do it just piecemeal. It has got to be. It's got to be prevented from happening again, because the function of government has to continue. But this is just regarding the power cable and power to the building. It is 40 years old. Are we addressing the need for a generator that's sufficient to function and run the courthouse in another power failure?
No, this is not included on this particular ask. At this point, Martin Case is concentrating on addressing the issue, the critical failure of that infrastructure. We do have a generator, and that generator provides emergency lighting across the campus. And the investment to find a larger, big enough generator to power the courthouse, that might be very expensive. But if that is the direction of the board, to look as to ways as to how we can purchase a generator, and we just have to see.
We should at least look into it
Yeah.
anyway. Because this building is woefully inadequate, woefully. And I'm concerned not only for the public, I'm concerned for our own employees as well.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
I guess if we're going to look into a generator at this point, which is fine, I would ask that we at least explore with our military partners to the north. They have a logistics supply center, and I know for a fact they have large generators and other large equipment that could be available. Some of that stuff is brand new and never gets used, and it gets timed out. So it's at least worth taking a look at.
And look at OfferUp and Groupon as well, see if we can get a better deal.
Offer. The word emergency is what I'm after. How do we arrive at that? Especially declaring it.
And you need to declare that to go beyond the $5,000 limit. That's my understanding.
I think that the board has the ability to waive the $5,000 limit since they set the limit. I don't know that it would require an emergency declaration. Perhaps you need that, though, to waive
I don't
the...
know either way, I'm just trying to get to the real.
Maybe Martin Casey
So-
can come and
Right. Perhaps what you need that for is to waive the RFP requirements related to a public work.
That's correct. In seeking advice from the Prosecuting Attorney's Office Civil Division, in similar circumstances, this is the approach that we've been counseled to take in order to effectuate repairs more quickly in response to life safety or hazardous conditions. And so in order to move forward, the emergency to kind of waive the 5,000 threshold, we are currently estimating, although we don't have an invoice from the vendor, we're estimating that last week's repair, emergency repair essentially, because it had to be done that day with the available vendors, will probably come in somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 just for that splice repair. And a permanent repair, depending on the scope and evaluation that we want to conduct first, which will require electrical engineering consultant to advise, could be considerably higher. So in order to move that as quickly as possible, the methodology that and the legal process we need to follow is this kind of a declaration. And there have been previous examples of that in county activities.
This is perhaps the first time the viewing public will have known that there was a major power outage here. Will you just describe what happened?
Sure.
Please.
As Ramiro described, there are, we get power from Puget Sound Energy through their infrastructure, which basically stops at the street or just across the street, and then it comes into the county courthouse through 3 main power lines through underground vaults. And one of the 3 main lines had a failure in the housing of some kind that through age and degradation sometimes happens. Sometime early in the morning of last Wednesday, that particular housing failed. The system essentially shorted out. That line shut down. All the safety protocols kicked in appropriately. And in order to diagnose and, first of all, locate the problem, because there's miles of electrical wiring across a facility like this, and first to determine if it was even on our end or in Puget Sound Energy's infrastructure. They did a preliminary assessment first thing that morning and then determined the location was, in a sense we were fortunate, it was near an accessible vault in the campus infrastructure, and they were able to use enough slack in that power line to be able to remove the damaged section, splice it back together with a temporary splice, and restore power that afternoon. But part of what we need to assess now is how do we effect a more durable repair, and we want to assess the other 2 lines that are in that same area to make sure that they're going to hold up, or whether they would need to be repaired or replaced as part of this project. That's why the scope of the project is still to be determined. We want to get a professional opinion on the condition and what is the most cost-effective way to assure reliability of the electrical infrastructure.
So due to the age and wear of the installation of that cable, high voltage cable, underground in a vault, and water got in, there was an explosion.
I wouldn't
That's the word I was told. There was an explosion underground.
I would say it was probably a fairly spectacular burst of electricity. I wouldn't necessarily call it an explosion, and there wasn't widespread damage. The vault wasn't damaged or anything like that. It basically arced and burst through the housing for that cable. The water wasn't really a factor. These vaults and infrastructure designed to, exist in an environment where water gets in. So we don't think the water itself was, a factor of that. That's often present.
So it wasn't water hitting the high voltage
No.
cable?
No.
Oh, okay. And thankfully it happened overnight.
Yes.
But the People's Civic Complex and court should not dysfunction like it did last week.
And many organizations, as we said, the folks implemented their continuity of operations plans. The Commissioner's Office was able to continue with its budget meetings, although in dim light.
One panel, I think.
One panel is open.
One panel.
The way, and to speak to the question on generators, we have the current function and design scope for the generator equipment that's in place here on the campus is designed to power emergency lighting and security systems. And so our card reader security system, for example, was not affected. It carried through on the generator. The jail security systems are covered and kept going by the generator. The emergency lighting and so forth, and a number of targeted power outlets in certain areas that were last mapped around 2000, those had power to them. There was one even here in the Commissioner's meeting chamber that had power to which you could hook up laptops and so forth. I know they did that in the afternoon. We have looked at in the past what it might take to operate a generator that could fully support all of the business functions of the campus. That would be a considerably larger and more complex generator. Since most of the generator technology that we have available is diesel-based, we would be doing the scoping with what we would have to hook into the infrastructure to do that, but we would also almost certainly have to get permits through the ORCA organization for air quality, because you're very restricted on what you can fire up and for how long is in those kinds of circumstances. But those are all questions we can get, explore and get refreshed information for on what would currently apply.
Thank you, Mark.
Happy to do that.
One final follow-up. Go ahead, Robin.
Just on, again, on the emergency clause, is this already covered on the CFP, the Capital Facilities Plan?
So we have in this year's, and in most typical years, we have, as I think the board has seen, both special projects where we're able to do certain limited major maintenance and infrastructure repairs under that category, as well as there are in this year's CFP and in the proposed one that you're currently considering, what we call major infrastructure renewal projects. And they're designed to provide that flexibility to be able to contemplate a major sewer line repair or electrical system repair or respond to an HVAC failure. You know, ideally, we try to keep up with our preventative maintenance and our assessment of this infrastructure in such a way that we can get out ahead of a failure, but do those kinds of repairs or work just in time. But this is within the
So
scope
it's
of what we
covered,
have.
so no need to change the CFP?
Correct.
And then is the emergency to allow spending in excess of appropriation authority, or do you have enough appropriation authority?
I believe we have enough appropriation authority within this year's capital facilities plan. I don't, at this point, unless the scope of this were to come back and say we need to do a much larger or more fundamental, more expansive replacement, that might trigger a different question, but right now I don't think we have enough information to suggest that it would go beyond our expenditure authority.
Okay, so those are all different types of emergencies that require different types of response.
Exactly.
So none of those needed.
None of the
Thank you.
information that we have at this time indicates we'd need to go there.
And could we get a copy of the resolution that
Oh,
the board will be signing? I don't see it.
The written original was coming from Scott Cushing through campus mail, I believe, to La Bonita, but we have the scanned copy.
Okay, great,
which
thanks.
Yeah, which was forwarded to you last Friday,
Thank you.
a signed copy from Civil Division.
And anything else? Because I have one comment.
Thank you.
No? So Romero or Martin or somewhere in between, can we do a letter of appreciation to Puget Sound Electric for their response and efforts to get us back up and going as quickly as possible, and possibly a replica of that explosion?
We'll be happy to bring that to this afternoon's board meeting so we can kind of show folks on camera the...
Sure that, but I was hoping to get a letter and have some guys come in from PSE and publicly thank them at some point down the
Be happy
30
to do
days,
that.
60 days out or something like that.
We'll organize something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
And get with Kelsey, she can probably handle that.
Right.
Kelsey Hulse. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that brings us to, okay, number 7, which is the county commissioners and county managers item. So at 3 o'clock, was it 3 o'clock? 3:30. 3:30 we had the Board of Health, and do we want to jump to that agenda and then come back? Let's do that. Let's do the Board of Health and keep them synchronized, and then we'll just come back to the other one. So I'm going to go to the agenda. Hello, Shelley. Hello, Lydia. I'm going to be on this agenda for everybody who's viewing. It's called the Board of Health Agenda, and it's for October 9th, 2018. And at 3:30, we'll call the meeting to order. And then we move to approve the agenda if there's no changes. And we do have a few presentations and proclamations also. The first one in presentation is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And that is super important. That's why we're all wearing, most of us are wearing pink, if not. And so there's a few from the community, from the American Cancer Society, and then Liz and others that come to give survivors who are going to speak to it, and some others who want to make a statement. And I'll let you take it from there.
Yes, that's correct. And thank you, commissioners, for abiding by the dress code today of pink and purple. So yes, the Breast Cancer Proclamation, Liz Davis will introduce it. Nicole Wolseley from American Cancer Society will be here, and a survivor will be sharing her story about her journey with breast cancer, and the proclamation covers statistics and facts about breast cancer and how you can prevent it. Move on to the next one, and then domestic violence.
Yeah, sure, go
Domes-
ahead.
Sure, and then it's also Domestic Violence Awareness Month, also known as Domestic Violence Action Month in many circles, because we don't want to just be aware of domestic violence, we want to take action on it.
Very good.
And so we will be discussing our coordinated efforts in our community in addressing and preventing domestic violence. And we are going to have several presenters and agencies here that work with survivors of domestic violence, including Safe Place, the Family Support Center of South Sound, and the Family Justice Center partners, which also include some of our local offices, such as or some of our county offices, such as the prosecutor's office, clerk's office, and sheriff's office. And you will also be hearing from them at 2 o'clock BSCC, as you know.
A little bit there, too. Okay, great. Any questions on either one of those proclamations?
No.
No?
Nope.
No? Okay, so that brings us to the point where the opportunity has, the public has the opportunity to address the Board of Health, and I just wonder if there's anything out there that might be of concern? No?
I'm not aware of anything.
No? Okay. So that takes us into department items, which is item number 4. The first department item, I don't know because mine didn't print. So
The print didn't come up.
what is yours say?
Sure. It's
What-
the Thurston Thrives Action Team
Oh.
update, and Crosby Carter will be here to introduce Zach Kostoris, who will cover incentivized housing and share about the work of that group.
So incentivized housing under the blue team, under the housing action team?
Yes, that's correct. And I'm listed as the contact, but I think that you could probably go straight to Crosby in the interest of time, unless you wanted anything specific from me.
Sure. We might do something like that. Oh, there we go.
Thank you.
Any questions about the Thurston Thrives with housing, incentivized housing with Zach, Crosby, and possibly Shelley?
No.
No.
Okay. Item number 5. Item number 5 is actually a motion to approve eventually. So it's a set up public hearing on proposed ordinance to amend the Environmental Health Division fee schedule. And you want to talk a little bit about that too, and where we're at and where we think we're going in terms of the fee?
Sure, yes. So our department is proposing a up to 10% fee on all of our environmental health fees to meet our current costs and future demand and current and future demand of the public to provide services in all of our environmental health programs, such as our on-site septic and land use programs, our environmental food program, our water program, our water lab program. And so Art Starry will be presenting this item, and he has a short slide show upon your request just to explain a little bit more about that. And as you know, you covered that in the budget discussions that we had earlier in the week, so it's been amended to reflect your changes.
Okay. Yeah, any other comment?
I guess I'm curious, how long ago did we increase the rates?
When was the last time we had an increase?
Every year, they increase by up to, I think it's 2.5% for the CPII, but I think the last significant increase has been many years. I'm looking to Art to chime in on how many years that's been exactly.
He's coming.
I can't recall.
I am Art Starry. So as Shelley indicated, it's been a number of years since there's been a significant fee increase. For the past several years, the fees have been adjusted by the Consumer Price Index to a maximum of 3.5%. And that's been adopted, that was put in a resolution adopted by prior boards, I think going back to 2013. So that's been an automatic adjustment. This last year, I think they went up about 3%, because that's the CPI that we use for indexing. That's the same as what happens with Henderson and Nisqually and also our other environmental health fees.
Does that answer your question?
Well, not completely. I'm curious if we're going to do 3.5% plus 10% or 7% plus CPI.
The proposal would be no more than a total of 10%. So the CPI this year would be 3.5%. If you didn't do anything, the fees would be adjusted by 3.5%. So this would be approximately 6.5% in addition to that.
To make 10.
Okay.
So a total of 10.
When we do get into a briefing situation, I'd like to know at least the last time this was increased. And
To this level?
yes,
Not the
you know,
three-
an
not the
increase
CPI.
more than the CPI.
Yeah, I have all the history of that. I didn't bring that with me,
Sure.
but I've got a
Okay.
fact sheet where I track all that stuff, and I'd be happy to provide that to you.
Maybe you can outline this afternoon in your presentation, when was the last time?
Yeah, I'll bring all
actually a
that stuff with
significant
me.
increase.
It's no problem at all.
Thank you.
But also, I related to what Shelley stated, you reviewed the budget of this particular fund last week, and during the review, staff provided you with a 10-year plan. And the 10-year plan really tells a story as to perhaps the need of this increase. And even with that increase, we're going to be seeing perhaps the fund may not be sustainable in the long term. And I just want to, for the public to understand, and you're not taking this very lightly, because in the background, you're looking also as to the 10-year financial plan and how all that plays a role when you might consider an increase on those fees.
And without going into specifics, 'cause I don't think you have it with you right now, but for the on-site septic, the food, the water program, and where the fees are going to be assessed, or the increased fee would be assessed, kind of just a real ballpark, Art or Shelley, is it like $2? Is it $5? Is it $10?
Really depends on the fee. So for instance, the drinking water fees would increase about $2. So drinking water lab fees. On the other hand, a large land use permit, you know, those charge, the fees for those right now are over $1,000. So you'd be, you know, adding 6% to that would be another $60, you know, and some would be more than that. So it's really adding, you know, 6.5%, well, or 10% total to those fees. So there'd be some that would be going up over $100.
For the large product.
For a large project.
Project.
The annual permit for a large restaurant, that's about over $1,000. So those folks would be paying, you know, 10% more, so $100.
But Joe and Jane Smith that just have a home, what are they looking at?
So someone who has an operational certificate, well, so two things. One is a lot of the fees, for instance, the ones for Henderson and Nisqually, they're set by ordinance. Those won't be adjusted by this. But for someone who has, say, a septic system with an operational certificate, that would be going up maybe $15 for a 3-year operational certificate.
For 3 years.
A small food service establishment like an espresso stand, their fee might be going up about $25.
Okay.
I'll provide some examples this afternoon if you'd like them.
I just want the public, when they hear 10%, it's a money grab. I'm going to be paying $50 more now a month. Because they just don't understand. I want them to understand
Yeah,
the
there's
minimal
a-
impact that it'll have.
Yeah, so that, again.
What an
it's-
impact.
You know, again, it would be for someone applying for a permit, we don't charge the general public thing, so it's gonna be someone who's coming in and asking for a service. Whether it's a renewable permit like a food service establishment, or someone who's coming in to have the water lab run a sample for them. So those are the services we provide, and as proposed, they go up an average of 10%. When you go and round things off and do all that other stuff, there'll be some minor inconsistencies there, but the goal would be, based on the information from our financial office, would be to generate 10% more revenue from our fee services.
All right, thank you.
I'm on the same thread as him, but a tiny little different, making the public aware. What is that process as we go along with this? Should it be adopted to let them know so they can, no surprises kind of thing? Do you let them know earlier, later, so they can adjust even if it's $1, $25, or whatever it is?
So if you choose to go ahead and set the hearing this afternoon, then we would go about using our different social media and other information to make our, the permit holders aware of the proposed fee increase, whether they're septic system monitoring folks or whether they're people in the food service industry. We'll try to make them aware of that. Then, of course, we'll notify folks about the public hearing, which would be we're proposing it would be on the 27th of November, 3 o'clock, which is the same time as your other revenue hearing. So we would notify folks about that. So we actually go above and beyond in trying to notify the hearing. In addition to using the Olympian, we try to notify the other newspapers. So we try to do that. So we'll do our best to make sure that folks who might be interested in are at the hearing and
Sure.
get information.
More the merrier. All right. Anybody else have a question? Comment? Anything else on that? All All righty.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else you want to? Nope. Okay, good. So then that brings us to number 6 and number 7, which is director's report. And I don't see it here, but 8 is the health officer's report, which should be here. Okay, sure. And then we'll make a motion to adjourn. That'd be exciting. Another Board of Health. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Shelley. So now I'm going to go back to the Board of County Commissioners for October 16th and try to get through that one and the TBD and then take a break. So I'm on the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda, October 16th, 2018. And as soon as I find mine.
It's a one-pager.
Yeah, oh, is it? Oh, my word. No wonder. That's 9, that's 9, that's 9.
Commissioner, if I may.
You may.
Just for the public, you
Oh.
look at the Board of Health, but also you may want to highlight that at 5:30 we'll have a public hearing.
Oh, yes, we do.
Oh, yeah. I caught that.
Rates and charges.
Yeah, and there's a public hearing where you will receive public testimony on a proposed rate increases for water and sewer in the Grand Mount, Boston Harbor, Thomas and Beverly Beach, and Olympic View.
Okay.
And at this point, the suggestion for you is to close the public hearing and no additional action. If you may consider increasing those rates, that will be part of the overall budget.
Okay. Thank you very much for the reminder. So be that is, we're going to move on to the Tuesday, October 16, 2018 Board of County Commissioners agenda. I'll ask Commissioner Edwards to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Move to approve the agenda at that time based on whatever revisions and modifications. Board meeting minutes from October 9, 2018. And then that'll lead us into item 1, which is the opportunity for the public to address the board. I'm probably sure that there's no issues that we can know at this point. So then we'll move into the county manager's update. We'll see what that brings.
Yeah, depending on any public testimony you might receive today, I will follow up.
Sure, absolutely.
Next week.
Mhm. And then item number 3 is the consent items. Currently, we have just the auditors, financial services, which is listed always on the website. Are there any other consent items that you might have?
Yeah, the agenda for next Tuesday is very small.
Yeah.
And that might be a question for the board, whether you'd like to consider keeping that meeting next week. We also have the Transportation Benefit District on the same afternoon next Tuesday. I only have one additional department item that we can add it to the 16. So that will put us to potentially 4 department items and for next week's meeting.
For the 16th.
For the 16th. And also to let you know, the board meeting for the October 23rd has been canceled because that's when you're going to have presentations from the different offices and departments related to the budget. So that's
keep
so
this one.
considering that, you may want to probably see how you like to proceed.
Okay. We'll come back to that and answer that in a second. Or, well, I actually need to answer it now in order not to go through this. So do you have any comment on the 16th to continue with the Board of County Commissioners and this agenda or any other?
No, I'm good.
Go with it? You're good in the what way?
I'm good. We can go ahead and do
Yeah.
this just as laid out by the county manager.
Okay. Well,
Because it's flexible.
The point is
The
you're
option
not
for
gonna
you
have
is
one
to
on the
cancel it,
23rd.
and
Yeah.
then we move some of the items for today's meeting, or just to keep it, knowingly there's a very slim
No,
agenda.
I think we ought to cancel it and go ahead with business for the budget.
no, that's on the 23rd.
That's
You're
on the
going to have
23rd.
that.
Yeah.
This for the 16th.
So let me make sure I got you straight here. On the 16th, keep what you see here as far as the agenda, because on the
Okay.
23rd, you're definitely going to not have
That's
one.
right.
So this one at least allows for some business to occur then.
Sure.
If you cancel this one in the 23rd, you got 2
Oh, no,
back to
I don't
back.
wanna cancel
Yeah,
this
just-
one.
yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that was going to be my suggestion, just
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there's
Okay.
a small, just
Go
to
with the
keep it,
16th?
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
conduct
All
the
right,
business.
we're going to go with the 16th
Yep.
and then
Okay.
adhere to the 23rd,
Sounds
what we
good.
already got laid out on the calendar, okay? With that in mind, I'll continue on. So that led us to consent item A, the auditors, and then any other consent items that find their
They
way.
might be coming, we'll add it.
Sure.
Yeah, and you will review this agenda again next Tuesday morning.
Okay, sure. And so we'll just kind of cut through this real quick. So now item number 4 is emergency services appointment to the Emergency Medical Services Council. Mr. Tom Fell.
Yes, you may recall the EU approved change of the bylaws to allow a non-voting member for those individuals who have served on the board for quite some time. And so following up to that approval of changing the bylaws on the EMS Council, this is for your consideration to appoint Dr. Tom Fell to the Emergency Medical Services and Emeritus position. So it will be attendant, provide his perspective to the board. Obviously, he has a lot of experience, and the board can benefit from that, but it will not be a voting position.
Is he a medical doctor?
Yes.
Yes, he is.
Okay.
No,
And
big time.
it's just kind of to maintain institutional memory, if you will,
Okay.
and recognize his service to the community.
We've been there a long time. Alrighty. With that, we'll move on to item number 5, which is a public health and social services item. Approval of amendment number 4 to the Washington State Department of Health 2018-2020 Consolidated Contract CLH 18264.
This particular amendment does two things: increase the amount of the contract by $507,500 for a total of $1,672,607, and also extends the duration of this contract from January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2020. The amendment includes an addition of the statement of work related to Office of Emergency Preparedness and Response, and also amends statements of work related to the Office of Immunization and Child Profile, perinatal hepatitis, and promotion of immunization to improve. Also amends the vaccination rates, how they've been tracking in terms of tuberculosis, the tuberculosis program, the tobacco and vapor product prevention and control program, childhood lead poisoning prevention program, maternal and child health block grant, and a national estuary program on-site sewage management system. This is a very large program which is included in the consolidated contract.
Any questions about the consolidated contract?
No.
Nope.
No? All right. So that gets us out of number 5. We'll move on to number 6, which comes from the Community Planning and Economic Development, and this is a 2018 Open Space Tax Program application.
Yeah, and this is a placeholder item. You will have the opportunity later on the agenda to have a larger discussion on the Lakemore Open Space application they have submitted. They also held a public hearing on September 18 where you received public testimony related to this particular application. And depending on how you like to move forward later on the agenda today, this item either will stay or will be taken out of your agenda, depending on how the board would like to proceed.
All right.
That's okay. I am kind of curious, though, what you mean by how we're going to proceed or how we think we're going to proceed. What do you mean by that?
There is a Lakemore open space application, and the board needs to decide whether to accept the open space application or not. And within that context, you can modify any open space application. This particular application has come to you, open space application including a recreation component. And really that is probably what you need to perhaps later on having that conversation. I don't believe the public is opposed to an open space. I think some of the controversy will be whether some residents would like to have a recreation component to the open space, and some other residents don't like to have the recreation component of the open space. And this is really what the decision that perhaps you need to make related to this particular application. Later on the agenda, staff will come and give you additional details in terms of some of the public testimony that you received, and that will give you an opportunity to further ask questions. on
That'll be this morning.
Yeah,
A few minutes, yeah.
it's coming.
You want to wait or you want to
Yeah.
hold?
Well, I'm not sure that I'm ready at this point in time, if that's what you're referring to make that decision
Well, if I may,
on the 16th.
this is just a placeholder item.
Placeholder, we can,
And as I mentioned, whether this item will remain or not on the agenda for next Tuesday will be depending on your decision later today related to this application.
Because we are going to get more input from staff
Yes.
today, right?
Yep.
Okay.
okay. So that concludes item number 6. And number 7 is commissioners and county managers items. And we know that's just out brief from committees and assignments and what have you. So that kind of concludes October 16, 2018 agenda. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Hutchings to walk us through or conduct the agenda for the Transportation Benefit District, and then we'll take a break.
So this is the agenda for the Transportation Benefit District for Tuesday, October 16th, 2018. 3:30 in the afternoon, we'll call the meeting to order and approve the agenda and the minutes and such. And then item number 2 is an opportunity for the public to address the board. Are you aware, Jennifer, of any hot topics?
I am not aware that anyone will be coming to the board to
Okay.
comment.
Then we move to agenda item number 3, department items. First one, 3A is Public Works, presentations on the Thurston County Transportation Benefit District, an overview.
Yes, so this will be an overview of our transportation system, the financial impacts to the road fund, a draft of the 2019-2020 work plan for the Transportation Benefit District, should it be funded, and then next steps for the Thurston County Transportation Benefit District.
The next steps, what might those steps be?
The
Being proffered.
the plan that we're proposing to move forward with. So in November, and on the next agenda item for October, we'll talk about our communication outreach, and November we'll be informing the board of that outreach and feedback that we received.
Okay. On 3A, any questions on 3A?
I guess I do have a question on 3A. As the Public Works Director, do you go out and interact with local community clubs and Chamber of Commerce, that type of thing, and let them know sometimes, because we have a kind of a limited audience here. Do you talk about these things, that what might be possible, or what your overall vision with Public Works, roads, upkeep, are you interacting with the public in any way?
Yes, and we are continuing to actually focus in on what those communication efforts are going to be, and the activities that we're doing for maintenance and operations and the needs of some of our infrastructure. We'll talk about utilities a little bit later, but yes, we are.
Okay.
Anything? On 3B, they're kind of connected, A and B, and you said that's when options will be presented, or communications plan has been developed, it'll be or developing?
It's developed, and we'll talk about how we're implementing it, and then the meeting in November will be what those outreach efforts, what we found as a result of those outreach efforts.
Said you okay, just bring that information back
That is correct, in
to
November.
the board, okay. Any questions on that?
No.
Thank you, Jennifer.
And then item number 4 is the director's report.
Yes.
What might you be sharing? You have any idea yet? A kind of a soundbite, a clue?
I think continuing to identify the why it's important, the importance of maintaining our current infrastructure, and the funding that's needed in order to do that. Everything you want to hear.
Yes, it's all options, and the public will want to tune in for that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Any questions? Commissioner Blake, go ahead.
Yeah. In your director's report, not trying to task you, but could you just highlight some of the roads and how they may or may not be targeted already for flooding in certain areas.
Okay.
Just the whole flooding and roads issue, just kind of start addressing it now versus, I mean, here we are almost in November, but
Okay.
still just kind of an awareness and typical roads that flood, I guess something like that, just the,
Absolutely.
see where I'm going with this?
I do.
And then any rerouting maybe that goes with that, and what the standard procedures are for the county to go out and do what they do, and how that's all kind of public awareness kind of stuff.
Sure.
Sure.
That it?
Yeah, sure.
And I have more. I'm just going to go ahead and spit it out. That is, rather than dance around it, I think it'll get some people's attention, and that is the Transportation Benefit District has been a district for quite some number of years.
For a couple of years, yes.
Couple of years, and it has no revenue stream coming in.
That is correct.
We're not charging the public, we're not assessing any fees to the public at all in the county for the Transportation Benefit District. And other transportation benefit districts have assessed the community in different ways to fund further road projects, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So when you come back with options, you'll, in November, December, you'll come back with options from assessing car tabs, assessing sales tax, assessing whatever it is to bring funds in and how that would be used?
Correct, yes.
Okay, because we're woefully short everywhere
Yes.
in the road department?
Yes.
In getting stuff maintained
Yes.
and the options. I want people to be aware that we're talking about it. Doesn't mean we're not deciding anything other than we're
Absolutely.
deciding we're going to talk about it and do community outreach.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
And if I may, as you reviewed the budget last week of some of the restricted funds, which includes the road fund, the 10-year financial plan give you a picture as to how the road fund is going to be operating in the next few years. So, and that is also, encourage staff to bring that as part of the presentation when you hear all the many different options that you may have.
And for the public, again, many cities in this county have already assessed car tab fees per vehicle in the cities to raise money for funds or for roads, road maintenance, M&O and such. And so that will be one of our options.
Yes.
Okay, that'll be one of our options, one of many options.
Yeah.
But the other option is do nothing.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, there's always that option for you commissioners, but also, again, I would like to encourage the staff to, when provide the options as to what you have in front of you in terms of financial options, also what the staff can be doing with those options. I think as a matter of background for the public to understand the road fund, the components of the road fund, and how that really works in the overall context of the county finances, and how this particular option could help on delivering the services to the citizens.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Looking forward to it.
I'm making sure I get all those notes.
Yeah, Gary, go ahead.
Are we still in this topic?
We are, yes.
Don't close the book.
She has not left.
I wonder if you couldn't maybe get into some type of an explanation of why we're short of funds to keep our roads up to where they need to be as far as ongoing maintenance, preventive maintenance, that type of thing. Are there issues involved? I don't know, is it the 1% restriction on property tax, or what exactly seems to be holding us back, I guess? And maybe you could throw in a few things that you've had to do as the Public Works Director to enhance your ability to do a better job with less revenue, and oftentimes those are not sustainable activities, but we're stealing from one place to do something else. So maybe a little broader perspective of what the needs are.
Does that include, you say the stealing from one place to put another, that would include where the road fund's going?
Well, whatever it takes, yeah. I mean, I like to have the public know what we're doing and why we're doing it.
There you have it.
So if I may,
Ramiro, who wants to go first?
I will interject, if I may, to say that, just to remind the board, that for the past 7 years, the board has been either diverting or moving through a levy lid shift, or actually combination of the two this year, $3 million or more each year out of the road fund into the general fund to support general fund expenditures and fund balance. So that's been one challenge of the roads department, and makes that much more or that much less available for the maintenance of our roads. So that's one thing, but perhaps Jennifer and Romero can speak to what we had to forego in order to do that shift.
Gary?
I guess I would say that it's been much longer than 7 years. We've been diverting funds out of there at least 30 years that I'm aware of.
So not at that level.
No, not at that level, but a substantial amount has been removed every year.
So $1 million or less prior to 2011.
To provide
but in
adequate
2011,
services
one at a time
to the public.
Right. In 2011, the amount went from $1 million a year, roughly $1 million to $3 million. And as part of your preliminary budget for 2019, you're contemplating increasing that to $4 million.
Romero?
So I'd just like to clarify for the public what you call the transfer from the road fund to the general fund. The two options of the road diversion as well as the road levy shift, those are allowed by law.
Absolutely.
So there is nothing that you can just take, right? This is allowed by law. The road diversion money has some restrictions, and that has to be related to traffic law enforcement. Without giving you a long explanation as to how we coordinated or discussed this matter with the County Road Administration Board, that's how right now the limitation of the road diversion is $1.5 million, which is funded for traffic law enforcement, particular to the Sheriff's Office patrol. The other option, the road diversion, is also allowed by law, and that one has no restrictions. And at this point, you're considering to transfer $2.5 million for 2019 and 2020. And that allowed by law allows you to transfer into the general fund for general government expenditures with no restrictions. Mm-hmm. Those are the options there's allowed by law, and those are the options at this point you are trying to exercise in 2019 and 2020.
Thank you for that, because we're being transparent about it. It's all open and public, and it's legal and justifiable, the diversion of the money to like law and justice or to the sheriff's office and such. Gary?
I guess I'd like to just expand on that it's not only legal, it's one of the few ways we have that we're able to get enough revenue to provide services in all areas of government to serve the citizens' need. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, it lessens our ability to keep our infrastructure up to snuff, if you will, because oftentimes we're putting off very important deferred maintenance issues.
And if I may, I'm going to switch hats on this a little bit. And I think this is the difficult balance the you as a county commissioners will have. As you're looking for ways to increase revenue to the general fund, you also put some pressures on the road fund. And again, based on the 10-year financial plan, this strategy is going to have a detrimental effect to the road fund in the long term. So the question is going to be how you are going to look for ways to generate revenue that supports the road fund, or perhaps supplements some of the road diversion as well as the road levy shift. And those are the options that you have. And the TBD, the Transportation Benefit District, give you some options, whether it's councilmatic or whether you like to go to the voters. And those are some of the avenues that perhaps you may consider to balance or try to balance the overall budget. Because again, the responsibility that you have is not just the general fund. The responsibility you have is countywide, including the infrastructure.
Yes. and thank you for that, because all these issues are all so related, and it's about coming up with a balance. Boy, you have a tough job.
So the presentation on the 16th will talk about the road fund diversion and levy shift, so we'll go into detail about that, and we have it quantified in terms of the amount of money that's been diverted or shifted over the years. We'll talk about that as well.
Anything further?
Maybe just one thing. It'd be kind of interesting to see if we couldn't have some type of an example comparatively to what Thurston County is, and I'll just say maybe Kitsap County. I don't know their layout exactly, but they're similar to Thurston County. We use them for other issues. And one of the comparables. One of the big things that we're hurting from is we don't have much in the line of retail sales tax coming in the unincorporated area of Thurston County. And it'd be kind of nice to know, because we're always talking about developing an economic engine, getting that going, because if we had more of a retail presence, what that could mean to us, and we might be able to see that in comparing ourselves to a county like Kitsap County, for an example. So just something to look at that might give us an idea of if the legislature is not willing to kind of give us some help to keep things up, what we can do internally by policy and maybe creating retail outlet in the unincorporated area, because in the incorporated area, if you have retail outlet, which we have plenty of, it seems to get annexed immediately, and then the sales tax division goes 85% to that municipality and 15% to the county to conduct a county business, which just is plain not adequate to do the job. So I just bring out that little issue.
So we have some comparables with Kitsap in particular.
Oh, do you? Okay, good.
And we can share information on sales tax collections, general fund overall, fund balance in Kitsap, and I'm sure we could also get how much their road fund. And if they do either a diversion or a levy shift, we can get all that for you.
Yeah, I just don't think they're required to do as much because they do have more sales tax coming in. So anyway, that'll be interesting to
So,
see.
and that's great information, because it's going to be important to put the information out to educate the public, to convince them one way or the other, and convince me or the board one way or the other as well.
Right.
As to the need, because it's called a transportation benefit district. And you can do all that in 5 minutes?
Well,
Oh, we'll give you more. You'll have sufficient time. You'll have sufficient time, Jennifer.
Thank
Anything
you.
further?
No, thank you.
Okay. That's it. So we will adjourn that meeting. And I'm going to revert it back to you if you want to take a break.
It's 10 after and come back at 10:20.
Okey-doke.
And mute your mic. Stupid cup.
Okay, so we're back, and there's a couple items on here we need to get through. It's 1025, the home farm, the all-terrain vehicle, and some of the commissioner items. How intensive is the home farm and the ATV thing?
That may be probably, you heard the items in the past. I'd just like to close the loop with the board to see how they'd like to proceed. On the Holmes Farm, this is related to a 2016 Conservation Futures Award that was given to the
This is CLT.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
It is to
this is good.
the Capital Land Trust.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it was intended to purchase property in the Fry Cove acquisition project. That acquisition has failed, and the request before you is to divert those $250,000 plus $25,000 for a total of $275,000 to the Home Farms Phase 2.
So the Fry Cove failed, and now it's home farm.
Yeah,
Okay.
and as you may recall, I provided my perspective to the board. It has not been done this in the past, meaning outside of the process.
Oh, the process, yeah.
But certainly it's within your purview that you can allocate any particular funds as you see fit.
Okay, so where are we at in the process?
And in at least from my point of view is always the precedent setting that you may set if you choose to deviate from the process. So that is the decision before you, whether you like to entertain the request from the Capital Land Trust to divert the $250,000 plus an additional $25,000 for total of $275,000 from the Conservation Futures for the purchase of the Holmes Farms Phase 2.
Yeah, I think you got.
My concern is I want to help them accomplish this particular project, but my concern is if we set precedent, are we then kind of obligated, everybody that comes in with a non-competitive approach?
Application, yeah.
Are we kind of setting ourselves up for a bunch of turmoil and favoritism and all that type of thing? I mean, I would like to have them be successful. I think this project's good, and I hope that it's not so time sensitive that we can't proceed like we normally would. I mean, this is kind of catching us off guard because we're not moving forward through the regular process. And I'm not all that familiar with the regular process, but we usually get several types of applications for projects. And
Okay, so you want the process.
I'd kind of like to have the process be done right. At the same time, I want to help them do it.
And they may still, if we respect the process, they still may come out ahead. Not ahead, but and award the money. But if opening or setting precedents and open up that door, if Nisqually
What's
Land
the
Trust
first step in the process?
So,
am I being shut down?
so just to give you,
Go ahead.
no,
finish.
I'm sorry.
Because it could come back and bite them if Nisqually Land Trust or some other trust wanted the money, they're awarded the money, and they want us to divert it. Then Capital Land Trust come back and say, no, respect the process. We want an option. Thank you.
So just to bring in the larger context of the Conservation Futures, the board has stopped going through the grant process because you would like to set aside as much of Conservation Futures for the Habitat Conservation Plan. And as a result, you have not entertained any new applications in 2018. However, there was a return money from the Monarch Park. There was $250,000 that you directed to have a small grant process. So if you decide not to go with this request, then the grant process that you will have for anybody who applied will be $500,000. And at that point, as you stated, Commissioner Hutchins, then not just the Capital Land Trust, but others perhaps can present options to you as to how the $500,000 can be spent and meeting the intent of the grant.
Sure.
Okay, I guess I'm I don't know that you completely explained the process or not, but
I was going to address your question, Commissioner.
we got the 250,000 back from Monarch, and we as a board have put a freeze on that conservation futures money because of the habitat plan that we're trying to figure out. But I don't think the intent was ever to freeze up prior dedicated money to projects just because they didn't pan out. And Monarch falls within that, and it sounds like this Fry Cove project falls within that. I mean, they're both things that didn't pan out for the entity that had originally put it together. So I still need to know what the process is, I guess, so that, I mean, have we received any input on the Monarch money, that 250? I think it was 257 or something like that. And then have we a process in place that we could put out to the land trust so that we could help them along, realizing that we have to entertain others that might submit as well and be fair with them.
To answer Commissioner Blake's question in terms of the process, the first step, as I understand, for you to make the decision whether you'd like to entertain this proposal or not. If the decision is to deny this request, then direct the staff to go ahead and lay out a grant application process for a $500,000 award.
Why does it have to be for 500,000? Just that we've got.
Doesn't.
I mean, okay, I'm interjecting.
I see that. Go ahead.
Why do we have to do it for 500,000? I mean, we can say 500's available.
Yeah,
But we could have 3 applications that come in for different
yeah,
projects.
and that will be up to you
Or
as to how you
6, I
like
don't
to do it. Also, within the whole context, you may recall early in the year, you wanted to revisit the selection criteria within the grant process. And I believe the staff was in the process of doing that. Whether you want to hold that and just go with the same criteria, that will expedite the process of receiving applications for you to consider, or you may want to wait until the staff has presented to you with options to change the grant criteria. A lot of questions.
I guess I would like to give them kind of a leg up, if you will, on their application, because they're trying to do the best they can. The Fry Cove thing didn't pan out for whatever reason. The money had already been allocated. So if they've got a like project, similar project, you know, and it falls within that scope, I'm all for it. But I don't think we can just give it to them without having the fairness of other projects.
I don't want to give someone a handicap. It's a fair process for everybody. And I want to hear the options from staff and hear what the recommendation is.
Yeah, me too. That'll do it.
So while staff is getting seated, I would just say that it's exactly these types of situations that triggered the establishment of a process so that the board could consider all the different projects that were out in the community.
So Joshua Cummings, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. I've got Andrew DeFobis and Cindy Wilson with me also from CPED. I think the county manager and the budget director framed the question and the concerns pretty accurately. Again, with the process, it's your process to change, amend, edit, but it is kind of that, as the county manager stated, we've put it on pause, and so there isn't really anything for them to jump into unless the commissioners say take it off pause and send this out to let other folks apply and restart the process. So I don't know, I guess I would turn it over to staff if they've got more to add, but there is no legal problem with diverting the money as requested. A piece of this is also the discussion of the habitat for the Oregon spotted frog and having staff continue that conversation and how we can partner with how that affects our HCP. So just whatever we do, I think the important thing is finding the path forward that meets appropriate and consistent process and also takes time into consideration, and staff time as well. More to add?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Josh. Andrew DeFobis, CPED. That's one piece I definitely wanted to bring up in this case was the potential for Oregon spotted frog mitigation under our habitat conservation plan. Of course, anytime a land trust writes into the county and says we have a request, we bring that forward to the board. And in this case, this is something that potentially could benefit the habitat conservation plan. On that side of things, there is a precedent for awards outside of the traditional period. I believe it was in 2014, the Board of County Commissioners agreed to set aside money for the opportunities to purchase land for habitat conservation under that HCP, and that's where ultimately the Mazama Meadows property came from. So there is a precedent for that. As Josh said, you can potentially divert funds should it be your pleasure to do so. As far as the rest of the process goes, as you know, it's been on hold. Staff was directed to put together a limited round with that money that came back from that Monarch project, and we have been kicking around some options, but that has been on hold as well because of working on the HCP. We've recently restarted conversations among staff and are going to engage our director soon on what those options might be for the board on that limited round. So if that's something the board wants to see back sooner than later, it's something that we could bring forward.
Sure.
I guess recognizing the Mazama Meadows purchase, it wasn't clear in that apparently. I think the intent was there that we get some mitigation, but in the end, I don't think it was, the verbiage was put in there right, if I remember right. I'd like to make sure that if we move forward on this homes thing, that it's recognized within that project that we do get that mitigation benefit on that Oregon spotted frog business. So that in itself is another reason to move forward, in my estimation, to help them do this, if that meets our need. I don't know what our total need is on the HCP as far as acreage set aside for the frog itself. I mean, just for an example, if we don't have that proper environment down at the T90 Ranch area that we're talking about partnering with the state, then maybe this is a proper expenditure to get us going on our mitigation. But I'd like to hear that from staff that, yeah, if we go ahead with this home thing, transfer the money from the Fry Cove to the home project, then I am willing to go outside the scope of what we would normally have done, because that is our ultimate goal, to get this HCP funded properly and get protections in place and get adequate mitigation, so that we can get going. So I just need to have a little more information. How many acres are we going to have to get of say swampland, waterfront, whatever it is for the spotted frog? How much does this accomplish to getting us towards that particular goal?
Right, and I think some of that information staff are working on. Josh indicated a few weeks ago that we're kind of doing the due diligence for this piece to bring back to the board. One of the items that we know would be necessary is a letter of intent that we would work on with Capital Land Trust, and it would lay out that mitigation potential and clearly state why the county is entering into this transaction and what the expectations are with respect to mitigation. We won't have all of the information up front, including the number of acres that would ultimately be available, but the framework would be there at the start.
I would like our legal to weigh in on this. Because you say there's a precedent already been set, but none of us at this table are attorneys, and I just want to know that it is legal and we can do this, just divert. And I'm not in favor, but I would just like that information before I finally decide.
You can. Okay. But get a legal review. So the bigger question is really with these approximate 500,000 unthought or thought, however you want to say it, because you had it on pause in your words, and move forward with several applications for several projects that may be out there to give that kind of relief and not touch into some of the stuff we're holding for the Habitat Conservation Plan pure. Do you know what I mean by that? So is that kind of what's going on?
Yeah,
You know,
that's
so-
fundamentally the
Right,
question
this
before
is
you.
very familiar to me. For the
Yeah.
first 2 years, we
Yeah,
did it
and-
a lot, so I'm intimately familiar with it. It'll be the first time they're dealing with it, so to speak. It's nothing grand, it's just new in a way.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because that's
Yeah.
fundamentally the question. Obviously, I'm not an attorney, but you can certainly deviate from the process
You can.
as you see fit. And I don't believe that you will be stepping in any legal issues, whether you want to
But we have a
entertain
process,
this
that's
option
what-
before you. The question is whether you like to accept this request outside of the process. If
The
you do-
singular action,
Yeah.
the singular
Yeah.
action, yes.
If you do, then it is accepted, and they request an additional $25,000
Sure.
to
Well, I'm
complete.
asking to go ahead and put the Monarch and the Fry Cove all in a package and have CLT and anybody else apply for their projects they may have out there in the general
And
public.
that is the other option. Thank
Right.
you, Commissioner.
That way
Yeah.
you will have a programmatic way of going about doing
Right.
some other items and not have any impact on the habitat HCP as a whole, so.
And is
That's
this,
but-
is this time sensitive?
Um,
Deadlines to meet?
I don't believe so, but certainly a decision direction will be appreciated, so
Yeah,
staff
there's-
knows.
It's time sensitive just in that there's a willing seller of the property at this time, and those things are always subject to change.
Oh, sure.
I guess I don't mind diverting from the process to accomplish what we need to get accomplished, but I am concerned that we get the mitigation portion in there as to what benefit we would get. Also, the possibility, are we going to have a maintenance issue that goes along with this? Because that's kind of up in the air as far as if we're getting like easement type purchase where the owner keeps the land pristine for the particular critter involved, or if we're going to have to be down there mowing grass every couple of months. I don't know. That's why I need to know a little more information about what we're doing. And to me, if we get that mitigation ability wrote up in the agreement, then I think we're in good shape.
So let me try this out one more time. Go ahead.
No, wait,
I just want to frame it, that's all.
is this the time to vote, decide whether we want to respect the process or not? Is that what we're looking for?
The question before you is you have a request
Yeah.
from Capital Land Trust to move
Yeah, that
the
jump the bill.
$250,000 to purchase other property, which is now is called the Whole Farms property.
What, home, yeah.
Yeah, home. And within that context, they also requested an additional $25,000, so for a total of $275,000.
That's easy.
That is the question before you. Yeah.
Then-
Option one.
Just based on that, precedent or no precedent, I don't want to waste or direct staff to do other stuff that's going to waste time because I want to respect the process.
Okay,
So I would be no. Everybody applies, again, the money's out there to apply for it.
okay, I got you. So there's two questions of the process, just to make sure we got. So do you want the process just for the home project and put that in one lane, or do you want to widen it to the $500,000 for others plus the home project,
And it'll still be the home project plus 25,
plus other projects?
plus other projects, okay.
Where the home project would be one of
Many.
Many.
applicants.
Yeah.
What you're doing is you're clearing the deck, though, in a program that was set by many commissioners prior to, and then the previous board had done it a couple times on Oyster Bay, name some of them, I can't remember, Darlings Creek, that we did the same programs all at once. We had a laundry list of ones we wanted to pick and choose. And this is where we're back at that same juncture. You just didn't have it for the 2 years, we put that on hold, so.
So reshuffle the deck. Let's give it.
So I'm seeing, one commissioner says, no, he would prefer to not
Directly,
just do the money from Fry Cove to home.
that's the direct portion.
And is there a second commissioner saying the same thing?
Yeah, I don't want to do direct.
Okay.
So now we're automatically at a process.
Right.
So do you want a process just for the homes, or you want to widen it to a broader thing?
There you go.
Right, yeah.
Widen it.
Widen it. I say widen it, but I don't know how you feel.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, let me set them straight on guidance, because I know what we're talking about here. I mean, because then they're going to know what I'm going to say here in a second. So you're going to take the listen to me, you're going to take the Monarch money, and you're going to take the Fry Cove money, you're going to put it in a package of a conservation futures, and you're going to give them direction to go off and ask for those entities out there who have possible conservation, preservation, environmental things, and they're going to apply, and you're going to get a laundry list that comes back to you, say, this one goes to this one, this one goes to this one, this one goes to this one, so it eats up to $500,000 in that, and to include the home, it'll probably be in there, and that'll already kind of be not earmarked, never, but there'll be competition for that probably, or not, but at least it'll be a fair and balanced approach to everything we do here, so that gets you everything lock, stock, and barrel.
I agree with that.
Does that help you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Except for Cindy has one closet. She's always good at this.
Okay.
Does that? Romero, did you have a question or comment or something? They're thinking you do.
No, I
He's
again,
trying to
I'd like
record.
I do.
I'd like to
He's trying to-
capitalize, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Wait a
My
second.
question is just to clarify the process that you'd like us to use. We've had a traditional process that's in place now.
The entire packet, right?
Correct.
Okay.
At one point, you wanted us to update that, which would take longer to update it and then open a limited one. So I just want to confirm that we're going with the existing process we have now
Yes.
without updates.
So the update would have updated criteria and also clarified whether or not the county would pay for administrative costs should a proposal fall through.
Right. So you want that up front in the application process, so that's early on versus later on, seeing
That
what it looks
is,
like.
those are two of the main things
Sure.
that staff were supposed to be updating.
Thank you, Sandy. Well, you want the administrative cost to be up front and know that who pays for that.
Right.
And so that one's, to me, is a guarantee. What was the other one?
There was an update of the criteria.
And one of the pieces of that was going to be to try to fold in the habitat conservation plan and
Everything has to
mitigation
be that.
potential.
Everything. So for applicants. I know that one across the board.
So that's
so.
the update, and
Yeah.
that's what Cindy's saying is going to add time to the process.
How much time?
Well, it shouldn't for the one that we're speaking of here
So
specifically.
it's
should
kind of
be
scalable.
fairly easy.
Yeah, it's scalable, and that's one thing that we've been working on is a range of options for the board, and then tying that to timelines. So
Here's the bottom line.
There's some
That's
pretty
unthawed, and that's the bluff on this, and to be able to get going and back to that portion of the conversation, conservation futures monies, and not be held up.
Right.
It's a small portion of money, I get it, but at least it's moving. Even if it's a little lag time, at least CLT knows and all the other people know.
So could you bring those amendments back within like 2 weeks?
I just want
We
to
could
know.
bring some options back in 2 weeks, yeah, and let you know what the time frame would be on, depending on which option the board wanted to choose.
Okay, those two items, right? He has a thing and he has a thing, so hang on.
The fee you brought up, who does pay for that?
So it's been determined on a case-by-case basis at this point. And I would recommend that the county have a policy so that that's not a up in the air kind of
Yeah, at
thing
least you
every
know.
time.
Right.
But where's
Yeah.
it come from in the past?
It's paid out of conservation
On conservation,
futures
okay.
on those occasions that the board has agreed.
Okay,
Right,
thank you.
but still, she says that we need a policy,
Got it.
Right.
I agree.
There should be a policy.
one way or the other, so, yeah, what do you have to say?
Okay, under our briefing paper today, I don't know if it's page 8 of 20 or page 3 of 15, but there is a section in here on parties responsible for maintenance and operation costs on that
You can
particular
include that
page.
in the write-up.
Pardon?
You can include that in an RFP, it's not a problem.
Yeah, and it pretty much lays it out, long-term management steward property will reside with Capital Land Trust. But I also want something in there about mitigation, that we're gonna receive
Oh, that's 100% criteria on that.
mitigation in there.
I think y'all know that, right? I'm
And
not
if
trying-
we have that in there, to me, they get a leg up on the process.
Well, don't say it
That's-
that way.
Well,
They're
that's
doing
kind
that.
of where I'm leaning,
We
that's
want
all.
habitat conservation and mitigation as a part of the application process.
Yeah, I don't mind telling people where I'm at.
Oh,
Are you done talking?
So
I'm not voting.
So let me try.
yeah, I don't mean to confuse it, but I think I actually
So
solved
let me
it for
try.
us,
So the decision of the board is to deny the request from Capital Land Trust to divert the funds that was intended to the Fry Cove and to the Holmes Farms. That decision is denied.
Yes.
And also the board would like to take the $250,000 as a result of your decision and to have a larger grant program close to $500,000. Before you can let out this grant process, you would like to see the opportunity to hear some of the changes in the grant process.
Yeah.
One is administrative costs, how you would like to proceed with that. And secondly, will be some criteria that will address the habitat conservation plan.
And that's already a given, but yeah, I see what you're saying, sure.
And then we'll get a draft policy.
That would be the draft.
That would be okay.
Yeah.
Everything
Perfect.
Romero stated, are you comfortable with?
Yes.
Are you comfortable with what Romero said?
I am. I guess I'd just like to clarify that they might get their 275,000 when they make their
That's right.
request.
Maybe.
That's
Yeah,
right. That's
that will
right.
be part of the grant
Yeah. That's
process.
So it isn't like we're cutting anybody off.
Yeah, you're
We
right.
just-
We want them to apply, yes.
Yep,
absolutely.
that's it.
Okay. Do you have, okay, I just want to make sure Andrew, okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you, all right.
Yeah, I'm called off the legal review. I don't need that.
Sorry.
Called off the legal review. I don't
Hold
need
on.
that.
All right.
Well, they're going to do one anyway, yeah.
Crossed out.
Thank
So
you.
the next item may be
Thank you.
So the next item may be hopefully quicker, and this is you heard our request from the Sheriff's Office. They would like to introduce a new resolution ordinance that will allow all-terrain vehicles on county roads. They're at 35 miles, posted 35 miles an hour and less. The decision before you, would like to entertain that. So the decision really is, would you like to entertain a public hearing related to this matter?
Do we need it?
A public hearing.
Yeah, I mean, is it
You-
mandatory that we have a
you-
public
you
hearing?
need- You need to have a public hearing.
Oh, well, then I
Then we'll
want to,
entertain it, yeah.
yeah, I want to have a public hearing,
Okay.
because I want to do it,
So,
based on what we get from the public hearing, right?
thank you, Commissioner.
Is that one done then? Is that one done?
Yeah, I want to do the public hearing, right?
All right.
All right. I have just a minute to get before I have to leave, so is there any way to hear the Habitat Conservation Plan update real quick and then move to the others?
Yeah.
I know, just take a minute.
Yeah.
All right, Habitat Conservation Plan update.
In
So
a
I'll
minute.
go back just a little bit really quickly. This is after we have turned in the draft of the completed HCP to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They had a chance to review it preliminarily. They then came back to us and said that they had some questions on technical review. We came to the board and requested guidance to approve for our staff to continue meeting with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on those technical review questions. We had our first meeting with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service last week, the week before? Last week, sorry. Time is relative. And so it was a good meeting. It was, we had our consultant also come up from Corvallis to assist in the process. We whittled down the main issues to two big buckets. The first one is that we had taken the board had directed the HCP to cover all activities, all species. And so we'd taken those all species and put them into guilds, so groups, right? U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service requested that we break those guilds apart and have it listed species by species. So that was one of the big technical pieces that's going to take some time. And then secondly, our staff anticipated this second request in terms of what's called an effects matrix. So for each one of those species, we need it broken out into what habitat they have, what habitat they need, what are the actions we're going to do to protect those species. That effects matrix is already about 2/3 complete. Staff member Chris Chapeau has been working on that already. 2/3 complete is a total of about 600 pages of an Excel document. So she's got more work to do on that, and U.S. Fish requested that work continue. They are reviewing they have committed to review those initial 600 pages while Chris is finishing the rest of that effects matrix. But this is a lot of detailed work that's going into this. And the goal here is to have U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service have what we have submitted, have them feel comfortable enough with it for them to send it to Washington, D.C. So those are the big technical pieces on it that I've directed staff to continue meeting with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on making sure that what we're putting in there is what they're hoping to see out of this. And I think that those are some big buckets that are pretty clear and cut and dry that we can work on. Where it gets a little more complicated is in the 10% methodology. And so the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service indicated very clearly that they are not yet fully understanding how we have taken our observational data of the past 4 years of the gopher review, where we've been out on the land looking at where gophers are, and applied that finding of species of gophers to all species. So that's the question that we're continuing to kind of go back and forth with on U.S. Fish, and that's where I'm having those conversations with their leadership. But just know that we've got kind of two tracks happening. We've got the technical review happening with the staff, and then we've got this conceptual thing that is still kind of needs to be fleshed out a little more in the 10% methodology. I think that the path is, we're going forward. It's difficult and complicated and complex issues, as you guys are aware, but I want to make sure that we had you updated.
Were there any showstoppers or negatives?
There was the question you guys had asked me directly to ask them was, have this be the only questions, right? Like, this is the sideboards, this is what we're going to talk about. And I asked of that, I made that statement to them directly. Their reply back was, we're not sure what questions are going to come out of these next technical review questions. And so we're still kind of working on that part of it also to find sideboards. If it's splitting up the two different topics, if it's finding, here are the questions that you need on technical review, and here are the questions that you need on 10% methodology, maybe that's how we're going to get there, but we haven't yet gotten there. I haven't yet got a final answer on their final questions.
Sure, but you can repeat that statement too if you want.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Sideboards are only, I understand there's branches and sequels. We'll get through all that, but no other additional major items. This one. Okay, Robin, then I go.
Have they agreed to extend the grant to pay for our continued work on this?
We've made that ask, and they have not yet given us confirmation on that.
We need to get that.
And when is that up? The end of the year?
Yes.
It's up.
Go ahead.
Do we have all the facts that we need for that matrix? I mean, do we know enough about the meadowlark and its area of concern and the butterfly and the Oregon spotted frog and all those other issues that might be listed? I mean, are we scientifically enough aware? Has U.S. Fish and Wildlife done all that information so they've compiled it at that point?
I don't have an answer to that question right now. Our staff is doing the best that they can with the information that they have.
Did
Does
the
staff have an answer for that?
Do you want to come up, Chris?
Hi, Chris.
In general, yes, we have enough information for all of the species, for the frog, for the butterflies, for the lark, to create that effects matrix. We have enough information about the habitat.
I just have two questions. Number one is, when fish said they wanted to get away from the gill and put them in each species, did they provide justification for that? I don't care what it was. Did they provide it, and do we agree with it?
Yes, they provided us the, finally, they provided us the reasoning.
The reasoning, is it satisfactory, or is it dubious, or is it just?
It's, they want more detail than staff biologists believe is necessary. However, it isn't something that is a showstopper for us. We have the information and we can create it.
Okay, and I'm adept at interrogation, and I can tell you're holding stuff back. So I'll leave it at that. Anything further?
Not on this, no.
Romero?
No, this is just an update, and staff will continue to update the board as to how we continue with conversations with U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
Okay. Now, do you have to head out of here, or no?
I'm going to have to go quick.
Quickly?
What is quickly, Commissioner?
Yeah.
10 minutes.
10? Okay.
So
do you want
then,
to grab?
may I suggest on the agenda,
Please.
Commissioner? So I would probably like to delay the Lake Lawrence conversation, the Lake Moore
Delay it?
conversation, until next week, until we'll have a full board. And also maybe concentrate on items 4 and 5, which is the Public Records Unit and grant, and also the Department of Justice grant. This is just a follow-up, and that shouldn't take.
Delay that one as well?
No.
Take that one.
Take 4 and 5, if you don't mind.
Okay, what do you want to do first then? Well, let's see. Lakemore will be done, discussed next week.
next week. And
Apologies, because we dropped one commissioner. We're going to have another one leave in a moment. We're not going to have time to, we won't have a quorum. We'll have to shut down.
And also Lake Lawrence next week.
And Lake Lawrence next week. Okay, so that leaves public records and the DOJ.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the prosecutor attorney is right here, John Thunheim.
I see him.
So the Public Records Unit and Grant, let me bring you back. The last week, you've heard the prosecutor attorney's office has received a grant for $30,000 for an application, a software application. That requires $12,000 match for a total cost of $42,000, and you also entertain that as a good option. The reason for this conversation is tied to the Public Records Unit, which is involved 2 staff members, and I believe it's 1 civil attorney and a paralegal. And as you may recall, back in 2017, you entertained this unit to be a pilot project. And the constraints of the pilot project is the 2 positions involved in the Public Records Unit have an end date of December 31st, 2018. So moving into the next year's biennial, budget 19 and 1920, some of the decisions need to be made, but that conversation, I believe, needs to be part of the Law and Justice group that you stated. And I believe the Law and Justice group have met, and this has been put forward. So next week, you will have a series of presentations from all the different strategy teams, and each of the strategy teams will give you, hopefully, a consensus approach as to how they are planning to spend the allocated amounts that you set out to do. Difficult conversations, difficult decisions ahead of you, commissioners, but I'd just like to make you aware the connection between what you've heard last week of the grant that we received $30,000 plus a $12,000 match is really related to the pilot project, which is 2 staff members are involved with that.
Gary, go ahead. No,
The
John.
public records portion of this is not all law and justice, though. That's kind of covers everybody. How come they're getting a say, or I don't know how that's all working, but it's more than law and justice for the public records business. It protects the whole county in a lot of areas.
I don't disagree with that, Commissioner, but is the prosecuting attorney's office who oversees this group, which is if the staff level, if the permanent staffing levels at this point needs to be coming out of the allocated amount, because there is no other money in the general fund to fund those 2 positions.
Yeah.
Well, no, we're going to have,
And those are the decisions you will have to make. Yeah.
If we're not accepting the DOJ grant, I think we're obligated to come up with some funding to keep the prosecutor's office whole to complete their mission. Because I think that mission is that it...
Are you talking about item number 5?
Yeah.
No, that's different.
I'm talking about...
He's talking about number 4.
On 4 is what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Well, we have prosecuting attorney John Thunheim at the table. Thank you. Do you want to?
Thank you.
kick-
Well, just to
add?
clarify, the grant that Romero was talking about is a grant that we just received from the state. It's not the DOJ grant.
Oh,
It's a state
okay.
grant
It's
from
different.
That
There we
was
go.
my
That's a
confusion.
state.
No.
Secretary of State's office that is for purchasing software to help us manage the public records. So that's a specific grant. There's no issue with that with regard to DOJ. But I do want to say that I will be advocating to you that, and I agree, I really don't think this should be part of the law and justice discussion. Now, Patrick O'Connor, the public defender, is here. We've sat and talked. We're scheduling another meeting with the county clerk's office to talk about kind of everything that we've got on the table. But I agree with you in the sense that the public records request is really an internal services request. It really has nothing to do with law and justice. And so I have a problem with it being put into the law and justice kind of strategy piece of this when it's not really about that. So I want that to be on the table, and we can continue to talk about that. And I also want to just remind you all that the civil division in the prosecutor's office, including the public records unit, the amount that they, the time that they invest in this is captured in part, at least, in the indirect rates. Because all of the time that my civil lawyers spend advising clients, including the public records unit, gets reported to the gentleman whose name just slipped my mind that does our internal, our internal rates.
Ron Haney.
Ron Haney, thank you. One of those things, right? And then that gets calculated in. So in a way, the cost of the public records unit, along with the rest of the civil division, is spread out through all the departments. And that's a little different than when you're just talking about pure general fund for law and justice purposes. So I just want to have that cued into the conversation. I don't think you have to make that decision now, but that's going to be part of what I want to talk about when the time comes.
Thank you. Romero?
I totally agree, John, with you. But within the total allocation, there is going to be an impact to the general fund to a certain percentage.
Right.
And that is probably the conversation from the commissioners, where that capacity in the general fund is going to be created.
I understand. From. Yeah.
And since my point of view, since it's coming from your staff, from your group, the conversation, the law and justice allocation should be part of that. So suggestion, I encourage you to come next week or whenever you're scheduled to do this, and just perhaps present a financial plan. Out of the two positions, how much is going to the general fund and how much is going to restricted funds? Do you have an indication to the commissioners?
None of the cost would go to the restricted funds in 2019 or 20. It wouldn't hit until 2021, so there's no revenue to back it up in the current year. It is a hit to the general fund in the first year because of the lag nature.
But I think the public records unit time all went into the indirect calculation for this year, so it actually will go in for 2020 probably. It lags 2 years.
It's
right?
a 2-year lag, so any costs in 2019, which is the year we're talking about, won't show up as revenue until 2021.
Right. But there will be revenue in the general fund from 2018 because
nope. Not until 2020. It's a 2-year lag.
That's what I said, 2020.
Yeah, so nothing in 2019. It's a hit to the general fund in 2019.
Commissioner Edwards. Yeah.
Is that true even if we have a pretty good idea of the breakdown of time spent? I mean, maybe it's not exact, but why do we have exact as long as we err on the side of caution, if you will? So if we know that half of it came out of general fund, maybe we go with that. Maybe in the end it's not quite half, it's really 60% or 40%. Can we do that?
So the state rules are that you can choose a method. You can anticipate how much on an allocation basis and true it up later, or you can do it on this 2-year lag method and actually bill out what it costs. But in either method, you have to be able to show that you build out the actual costs at a applicable, appropriate allocation. So if we took part of the civil division and build it out one way, and part of the civil divisions build out another way, it introduces a complexity to the process that creates a workload issue, quite frankly. So we could do that, but it would become confusing and difficult.
And as John said, it's not a request for you to make a decision at this point. It's just to bring awareness of the complexity of that you may be facing. And again, just to clarify, my intent from my point of view is not to diminish the value of the public workers unit,
Critical
because from my
need.
perspective has provided a tremendous value to the county
Right. Critical need.
to all the departments. Thus, the value is stated. But my obligation is to make sure that you have all the facts in front of you when you're making decisions related to the general fund, which are going to be extremely difficult.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you really to bring those forward to be part of your presentation, because it is a value added to the whole county, and it should be part of the conversation when you and your team presents those recommendations.
Okay.
Anything further?
Not for me.
I guess if need be, I would say it's such an important endeavor that we do a little more levy shift or something to cover that shortage if we need to, because it's not going to be that much, is it? What's the whole project? What does that do?
Don't you have
I
to
think
go?
the whole policy request was in the order of just over 200,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's
two
a
estimates.
valuable
Closer to 300.
program, I think.
I encourage the board to take the time to listen
I'm
to the
not-
facts.
I'm not talking about
before
it today.
You're making a decision as to how you would like to make
Yeah.
budget decisions.
I just want
Thank
the
you.
prosecutor to know that I think it's a valuable process.
think it's valuable.
I think
Yeah,
all of us
we
are
all
Discuss
agree.
that later.
All right.
All right. Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Why don't you stay for the deal?
Oh, you want me to stay here? for
Yeah,
that?
if you don't mind.
Okay, Not at all.
Okay, what are you doing next?
Item number 5, quick.
The what?
Item number 5. This is
Oh,
related
yeah.
to the Department of Justice grant. You already made the decision not to accept the 2017 dollars, and you also made the decision along with the prosecutor's attorneys not to accept the 2018 grant. So the next step in the process is just to write those letters to the grantors, the federal government. So we have 2 letters for your consideration. John has reviewed those letters, provided some
Okay.
comments, and this is in front of you. Those 2 letters have your signature, the board signature, as well as the prosecuting attorney's signature. And 1 letter is retracting the certifications of the 2017 dollars, and the other letter is really not to accept the 2018 grant. So I believe you provide the
Right.
comments, we incorporate those comments, and those are ready for signature unless you have the.
So this
Perfect,
is
thank you.
in the reference to the burn
Yeah.
jag
Grant.
This
grant.
is the JAG
And
grant.
does that need to be sent in today? Is that what we're talking about?
This,
It'll be sent
well,
in.
really, yes, this is the formal notice to the grant manager
Thank you.
and the federal government of what our action is.
Thank you. And again, it
In
was,
part because I'm not expecting the litigation to be wrapped up. I think it's gonna go on for a while, and I don't see the point in waiting around for that. I actually just found out yesterday that what we're doing here is consistent with what the state is doing with regard to the state burn jag grant funding, because the issue came up during the Thurston County Narcotics Task Force gets some burn jag money as well, but that's in the same position because the state had decided not to go forward with 2017 or 2018, the same as we have.
okay.
So
And again, this
we're all
came,
kind of in the same place right now.
Are both of these letters the same?
Pretty similar. The only change is on the first paragraph is a very succinct difference.
Right, there's nuanced in that the 2017, we're retracting the certifications that were
2018.
made. 2018, we hadn't made those certifications yet, so we're just saying we're not gonna accept the award at this point.
I guess my concern with these letters are that where the sentence currently, these conditions are the subject of litigation in federal court. I think that's out of Portland, is that right? I don't know that, but I've just heard that.
Well, it's, the lawsuit, is it in this, New York, in that district? I don't know where that.
I thought that came out of Portland. Federal court, but in Portland, wasn't it? Out of the Portland District Court?
I don't think it's in Portland. Well, there's several different litigations going on across the country. There's been one down in California, there's been the current litigation that John's talking about, the state of Washington is involved. That one is being led by the state of New York. So it's that.
does it matter?
Yeah, to me it does. I mean, I really think that if we're going to follow some laws, we should follow all the laws. But if this is a court case that is a active court case, I just think it ought to say what that court case is. I don't really know what it is. I mean, I'm just going by hearsay to me. The sheriff had told me one thing, the board reacted prior to my getting on the board based on that, I think, with a ordinance or a policy. I would just like to have it included in the correspondence of on the why portion of this. I mean, we're kind of hanging fire because we're in a no-win situation here. We don't get the money, and we've got a court telling us that we can't do it anyway. I'd just like to know more about where this is actually coming from, because I feel obligated to follow the law of the land, whatever that is. I don't know what it is. So I'm just kind of hanging fire.
So it is law of the land.
Well,
that's a fair question.
I mean, that's really what's
It's being
in
established.
that's really what's in the litigation. So the status of the litigation right now is that a federal district court has issued a national injunction that prohibits the federal government from enforcing the provisions that require local governments to produce ICE information on request, or immigration information on request. That is the subject of the litigation. The concern is that if that injunction is lifted at any point in time, then the federal government can immediately initiate an action to enforce that, and that could put us in dispute with the federal government. So my advice and my own decision for my own office is we just stop this. We just put a hold on everything. We let that litigation play out, let the federal court make a final decision, and then once we know what that is, then we make our decision about whether to go forward with further grants or not.
Well,
Okay.
I guess from my perspective, in correspondence that I've been involved in the past, rather than very vague, we have this or that, if we know what the court is, I don't care where it's out of, just as long as I think we need to refer to what's holding us up. So it's not just the county, it's not just Department of Justice. We've got a court in the middle of it, and I think we ought to refer to that.
You want the case cited?
Yeah, I'd like to see the case at least cited in there, that here's what the problem is, and maybe that will help even put a little bit of push on getting this thing solved. I mean, we need to get it solved somehow. I don't know when it's going to be solved, but I would like more information if I'm signing off on that.
So let me see if I understand what you're looking for, Commissioner.
Can we get to Robin real quick?
No, go ahead and resolve
Okay, go ahead.
this,
Romero.
but then I have a different question.
So let me see if I understand what you're looking for, Commissioner. When is making a reference on the litigation in the federal court, you would like to see the actual court number of the litigation? I mean, the court case?
I don't know what we're responding to. I've only heard about this. So if we're responding to a court out of New York, case number 1234 brought by our Attorney General, I don't care what it is. I'd just like to have the real facts in there for prosperity, I guess. We look back on it a year from now. What was that about? Well, it was about,
So
I'd like to have it
I'd like to probably
tell a
look
story.
at Elizabeth, maybe you, can we, because I think there's many cases.
Yes, there are several different cases going on, and I'd be happy to provide citations in the letter.
Yeah, that's it. That'll do it.
If that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think it would for me, just that I think the letter's incomplete without citing the issues. That's all. That's the only thing I'm saying. And that's why I asked if I need to sign it right now, or can I do it after lunch,
So
or after the meeting?
we'll revise the letter, and then we'll circulate for signatures.
Okay. Robin, you had a question on this?
So my question is a little broader. My question is, how many other federal awards have this requirement? Because many, if not all of the federal awards that we accept have the same requirement for drug-free workplace. They all have non-discrimination requirements. How many now have this clause that we're just not aware of at this time? And I think we need to look more broadly at all of our federal grant awards if this is an issue.
And Commissioner Hutchins requested that last week.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think we want to keep an eye on all the federal grants. Right now, the Burn JAG, because it's a Department of Justice grant, is the only one that I know of. That's not to say that there won't be attempts to slip it into other grants. So I think certainly based on this, we'll continue to be vigilant about watching for that language.
And I thank and commend the public for bringing it to our attention. Is that Esther?
And I guess the other thing I would say is that as of right now, the injunction's in place, so even if it showed up in other grants, it wouldn't necessarily allow the federal government to do any enforcement. That being said, I think we want to continue to make sure we understand exactly what if there's any added language to any new grants that come out.
Yeah, I think it behooves us to be diligent on all of this stuff.
So when this is decided, down the road, you're all up to speed. I mean, you get texts and emails and all kinds of stuff coming at you, I would imagine, that'll say, hey, this case is decided, we're going to start applying for federal grants. That's been removed or whatever.
It really depends on what the outcome of the litigation is and then what the federal government's response to that is. So if the federal government prevails and they insist on continuing forward with this language, my advice would be that we discontinue our grant applications, at least for ones that require that. If the federal government loses and the injunction is made permanent, then I think we could consider reapplying or applying for future grants. But it all depends on what that court decision really comes out to be.
Would this go to the U.S. Supreme Court then for decision?
Theoretically, it could go there. It's too early to tell.
Okay.
I think.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Anything else?
So as we prepare the next budget amendment, since this is a reduction in revenue, we'll bring the budget amendment forward.
Okay.
That reduces the
Next week?
associated appropriation.
Next week?
That's in 2 weeks.
2
You'll see
weeks,
that.
okay. All right, that exhausts the list. Did you, just real quick, as you're walking out the door, have you had a chance to go through the applications for the board and commissions?
No.
Good, me either. Okay. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Until 2 o'clock.